Dylan Raiola, one of the best players on the planet. Is that possible? That's what Matt Rhule said will happen someday. We give our thoughts next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
All right. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Connor Happer here from 1620 The Zone in Omaha. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Got some things coming at you for the rest of the week here. Matt Rhule, he didn't do interviews with the local press yesterday. He did that on Monday, and we'll speak with him again on Thursday. Getting ready for the Friday game.
Today. Matt Rhule's doing it today. Today. Know this for your show. You're going to need to cut into programming and go live to Matt Rhule.
Yeah. Maybe not live. By the way, they didn't do the press conference live on Monday. It was odd. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Anyway, Matt Rhule will talk again today. So we get Matt Rhule apparently just every day this week. He went on Rich Eisen's show yesterday, and he towed the line that he usually does. He was grateful as he usually, he made reference to, hey, this is part of the gig, and you get interviews like this, going on the Rich Eisen show. People care about you and all that stuff. And so, but the first probably 6 or 7 questions were about his quarterback, about how he looks like Patrick Mahomes, and if he knows that he's doing this and all of these things, and then the expectations that are heaped on a player like that. So I'm going to play you a little snippet from that show on Tuesday, and you tell me what you think. Here is a little clip from the Rich Eisen show.
Mahomes out loud for a kid this age, and obviously where he is in your program, is one thing. But if you say he's egoless, no big deal, right? I mean, for you to throw that out there, would you say that, Coach?
Yeah, no doubt. I think I'm at a point in my life. I got a son in college. I don't think there's anything wrong with all of our players with having high expectations and speaking like belief into them. Like I believe that Dylan has a chance to be one of the best players on the planet at some point. And so, I think that the key is whether it's him, whether it's his family, whether it's our players, whether it's me, we all just have to make sure that he continues to work at it, and all of our players continue to work at it. But I'm not one of those guys who's going to beat people down to get them to be good. I'm going to tell them what I expect of them, tell them what I see in them, and I see greatness ahead for him. And so the key now is just every day, are you being great? And he shows up every day with that kind of mindset.
So I'm going to tell him what I see in him. And right before that, it was, I think, if he has a chance to be one of the best players on the planet one day. So this is a bit of a departure from what we were talking about over the summer, Mitch.
Oh, the train has left the station long ago from the summer. The summer, it was all of the quarterbacks in our program have a chance to help this team this year. We're going to need them all. And, we're not treating Dylan any different. He has a chance one day to be one of the best players on the planet. This is just the progression of a freshman quarterback who's a 5-star living up to expectations. So when he says one of the best players on the planet, not to split hairs here, but do you think he means like every NFL starter is one of the best players on the planet? Because, yeah, you're one of the 30 guys out there who has the most coveted job in all of American sports. Or does he mean like he's going to be in a class that we would today put like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and that's maybe it? Because when I think of the best players on the planet, and I'm including quarterbacks, I'm thinking about like the elite of the elite. Does Matt Rhule believe that Dylan Raiola can be in that category?
That's what I was thinking when he said it. He might be able to use the former as cover. He might be able to use that and say, well, I think he's going to be in the NFL someday, and all those NFL guys are are elite or something. If somebody asked him about this, which I'm
someday,
sure
someday when if Dylan's like struggling to well, let's not even say that. Like he's going to be we'll see. It's 3 games in. He certainly looks the part at this stage. I mean, I think if you went back and you looked at the careers of these players we're talking about and you saw how they began their college careers, none of them, very few of them. You know, Trevor Lawrence had an incredible start to his college career as a true freshman at Clemson. He was on a national championship team and he unseated a quarterback who was older than him by midseason and just looked every bit the part of the number 1 recruit in the country. I think Jalen Hurts, like he looked like that as a true freshman. These guys are NFL starting quarterbacks now. One doing pretty well, Hurts. One doing not so well, Lawrence. But yeah, Raiola doesn't have the kind of talent around him that those guys had at Clemson and Alabama. So it's there. Like he's off to the kind of a start that would lead a coach who's been in the NFL and seen great talent at the college level to make a statement like that. Still, it's a like raise your eyebrows moment to see him do it.
It's really bold. I think it is. Now you can look around and you could say, man, he really does have those things. And the great thing about Rhule is with his background in the NFL is that he knows he wasn't in the NFL for that long, so it's not like he's a surly seasoned veteran, but like I think he keeps his contacts in the NFL. Like he knows what teams are looking for. He knows what coaches are looking for when it comes to a quarterback of his talent, right? And so you could take a guy like, Caleb Williams, who might have all the things that Dylan Raiola has or had, whatever it might be, like coming out of USC last year. But then if you don't put any semblance of an offensive line around him, well, it's going to look like how it looks. And so they have to, teams have to be really, really careful about that. But at the end of the day, there's still this gap of, I don't know what, 20%, like there's a margin for error here.
Yeah. It's so much about where you go, right?
You just don't know. It's where you go and who you're with.
That's a conversation for 2 years from now. But this to me is most interesting because Nebraska spent all of the offseason managing expectations for Dylan Raiola. And then Matt Rhule knows what he's saying when he says that. Like he doesn't just say that by accident, that he thinks he could be one of the best players on the planet someday. Some of this is Rhule letting down his guard because Dylan has shown him enough to the point where you can actually say what you think about the guy. And then some of it I think is also like, hey, are you listening? Are you listening? 2025 great player who may be committed to Alabama, but needs to rethink this before signing day. You have a chance for 2 years to come in and play with somebody who I, as the head coach, believe can be the next Josh Allen or whatever it might be on that level. Like this is validation from the coach, not said during a recruiting visit, not said in a phone call or a text to a recruit. I'm saying this to Rich Eisen on a national show. So I'm putting myself out there that I think this guy can be like this. Wouldn't you want him to be your teammate for a couple of years in college?
Yeah. And the great thing is for Nebraska now, like Rich Eisen didn't have to do any research on who Nebraska's quarterback was when he had the Nebraska coach on. And it wasn't like he had the Nebraska coach on just because he had to. It was like, it kind of seemed like he wanted to,
I don't think that Matt Rhule, as the coach of the number 22 ranked team in the country, going up into your Big Ten opener against Illinois, is getting on the Rich Eisen show if insert random quarterback is your starting quarterback this week. He has become the reason that people care beyond the borders of Nebraska or beyond the borders of Nebraska's fan base about Cornhusker football.
So speaking of this, I saw this from The Athletic, Mitch, the other day, and a couple days ago on this show, I said, look, I've watched some of the other quarterbacks in this league play, and you kind of know the lay of the land at this point. I think that Dylan Raiola is one of the best guys in the league, and maybe I'm a homer, but now I see this publication or this story from The Athletic, Week 4 Big Ten quarterback rankings. your publication, Miller Moss, Dylan Gabriel, and Will Howard, where do they fall? And so there's tiers. Tier 1, there's the Oregon quarterback situation, the USC quarterback situation, the Ohio State quarterback situation. And then there's tier 2, right along with Will Rogers and Drew Aller, a former 5-star quarterback who maybe hasn't lived up to the expectation, and Curtis Rourke at Indiana, who's killing it right now. There's Dylan Raiola right at the top of that pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that he's that far off of the Will, gosh, you could put him right in that group right now. It's just he's played 3 games.
Who would you rather have? Well, it's not a who would you rather have, because I think Ohio State might say Will Howard, who is a seasoned veteran in the college game. But I think if you said who's going to make a name for himself down the road at the next level, it's Dylan Raiola over Will Howard.
Yep.
As for Dylan Gabriel and Miller Moss, they're very good college quarterbacks. I mean, these guys are Heisman Trophy contenders for sure, and Dylan is not right now. So I have no issue with any of those guys. You're going to put the Ohio State quarterback in there. Some of this also is like the quarterback situation. I think that's how it was framed. And we're doing this every week. Like in place of having Big Ten power rankings where you just kind of try to put the pecking order of 18 teams, we're going to pick a topic every week and rank the teams or as it relates to their quarterback situation or whatever it might be.
Sure.
So I'm involved in like planning out some of these things for later in September and October. So I think he's in a good spot. Like, this is the quarterback situation at all of these schools. And some of it has to do with the players around that quarterback, it would seem, or you're not going to have the quarterbacks of the 3 best teams at the top. Heady stuff that Dylan Raiola can be at the top of tier 2, just 3 games in.
Nebraska has another nationally televised game on Friday night. They're a ranked team against a ranked team. This will not slow down anytime soon. It'll continue to come up on this podcast as well. All right, we'll take a quick time out here. We'll come back on the other side. A big night for Nebraska. Well, a big night. Well, we're talking about the baseball schedule, which came out a little bit as well. We don't have the volleyball topic in there today, and some quotes and notes from Nebraska assistants yesterday. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Back after this. All right, you've heard us talk about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5. You get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with your YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So you're going to want to get on this before the weekend. Head to the FanDuel Sportsbook, place a $5 bet, and you could take advantage of a sweet, sweet deal. Once again, a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just head to FanDuel.com, promo code locked on or /locked on. Download America's #1 sportsbook today. Take advantage of this great deal from FanDuel. And I'd like to remind you about Game Time. These two go hand in hand, really. It's college football season, and the pennant races are coming down to the wire in baseball. Unfortunately, a little too close for comfort for our beloved Kansas City Royals. And so maybe you feel the extra urge to get down to the K in the waning few games of the home slate before the hopefully playoffs.
I've got that urge.
Yeah, you might need to. Game Time is the right thing for you. If you got a game you like to see in person, Game Time is going to make that experience easier. It's an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and it makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app go down closer you get to first pitch. And so whatever you'd like to do here in the early fall, there's so much going on, whether it's sports or concerts, baseball games, whatever it might be, college football. If it's a hot ticket, it is on Game Time. And I love that you can see those flash deals, the views from your seat, and you can customize your spot in the stadium. It's just a really easy experience. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That is with Game Time. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Okay, we are back on this Wednesday of a short game week for Nebraska, Illinois, coming up on Friday night at Memorial Stadium. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. As you teased before the break, we're going to talk for a minute here about Nebraska baseball and the schedule that the Huskers received from the Big Ten on Tuesday. Also going to touch on Nebraska volleyball, but something I want to mention first that is a surprise to you, Connor, because it's not listed in our little show document that we lay out. There was big news for Nebraska football fans on Tuesday. For the fans, not the fans that live in the state of Nebraska and drive to Memorial Stadium every week. I'm talking about the fans, and many of you listen to this show, who fly into Omaha to attend Nebraska football games. And you do this a few times a year. And when you land in Omaha, you are hungry because you've been on a long flight from California or the East Coast or wherever it might be. And you need to get some food. And you get off the plane and you see Cracky McGee's.
You do.
We in Omaha are not all that fond of Cracky McGee's. Is this a correct statement?
We take great pride in Cracky McGee's, but if there were better options, we might use those.
Well, they're coming. And are they coming? This is like you got a McDonald's in your neighborhood. It's like on the edge of the neighborhood, and you were excited when the McDonald's was built, and now they're putting in like a Mahogany Prime. That's what's going on. So coming to Eppley Airfield in 27-28. That's a ways off, but
Not really.
Yeah, right. It's almost 2025. Runza, Block 16, Starbucks. You got a Mill Coffee, Hollywood Candy, Pitch Pizzeria. There's more. This is like, what is going on that all of a sudden Panda Express, the chicken guy, this was huge. And this just dropped on Tuesday. Like, oh, we got a little news for you about the airport, which is being renovated. And you're telling us you're going to put a Block 16 and a Pitch and a Mill Coffee and all of this stuff into Eppley Airfield, which for years and years and years has had no good places to eat.
We're so back. We've never been more back. This is a great, I cannot wait for the Omaha airport to be. Now, it's going to be a horrible, horrible, horrible pain in the butt for the next 3 years. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the road, there will be Runza. There will be Block 16. There will be a beautiful Croque Garçon burger just sitting right at the end from Block 16, just waiting for you. There will be bagels from Bagel Bin at the various breakfast vendors that you could just stop by around the airport. We are so back. It's unbelievable. Like, people are going to love to come to Omaha. Now the professional sports franchises, you guys can get in line because we're back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Countdown is on to 2027-28 when all of this stuff comes to Eppley Airfield. And it matters a lot to Nebraska football fans. Okay, a huge night on Wednesday at the Devaney Center. Nebraska is bringing in Stanford to play volleyball in front of the 8,000 people who are probably lined up right now as we tape this at 8 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Last week it was Creighton in a thrilling 5-setter, and that was just the appetizer. So Stanford this year has beaten Minnesota in 5, Wisconsin in 4 sets, and then swept Texas in a stunning development last weekend in 3 sets. So the card are just getting better as the year goes on. And John Cook's team is 8-1 and ranked number 5 in the country, but has been a bit shaky at times out of the gate. This one's on Big Ten Network. Nebraska will play Sunday at 11:30 a.m. against Louisville at the Yum Center. They're opening up the top of the arena, selling tickets for $5 a pop. They're going to pack in more than 10,000 people into that venue, which will be the host of the Final Four in December. That game's on ABC. So volleyball again is having a moment in Nebraska this week, and the center stage here in the next few hours is going to be right there in Lincoln. So huge night for Nebraska volleyball.
Yeah, credit them I mean, they could just as easily they're Nebraska, but I think they feel this like draw to be the kind of the person, the team, and the sport to say, we're going to make these showcase events like this. The sport sort of needs us to play these games, and it does. It answers the bell pretty much every time. And now there's more and more of that happening. Nebraska always does it in the non-con. They're not, why would they be afraid of anybody? It's not like it is, or it's going to be in football where it's like, oh, well, it'll make the playoff, whatever. Now, I mean, Nebraska understands that it's about something a little bit bigger than that. So kudos to them.
All right, we'll get back to this week in football in the third segment. But before we finish this and take a break, the baseball schedule came out for 2025, and Nebraska is going to play LSU at a neutral site in Frisco, Texas at an early season tournament on March 1st. So that's eye-opening, Nebraska LSU. They don't play often on the diamond. The Huskers have a 3-game series, a non-conference series against Oregon State at Haymarket Park in late March. That's not happened before. I find that to be very interesting. Oregon State, of course, is kind of out in the wilderness this year with no Pac-12 to lean on. I imagine scheduling was difficult for that team that's been a multiple-time national champion, a perennial face in Omaha in June. So the Beavers are coming to Haymarket Park at the end of March. Ought to be big as long as there's not a blanket of snow on the ground. And then where there will not be snow on the ground is in Southern California in the middle of March. So Nebraska got a sweet deal from the Big Ten in scheduling its spring break around trips to UCLA and USC. The Huskers will play at UCLA on the weekend of March 14th, at USC on the weekend of March 21st. These are Big Ten games, of course. And then in the non-conference that week, midweek games, a couple of them at Pepperdine, which is the coolest baseball stadium in the country. If you've not seen it, I've seen it. I've been on that campus. There's an ocean view right there on the hill in Malibu overlooking the Pacific. I think several Nebraska players may end up in the transfer portal that week as they play Pepperdine and just transfer to Pepperdine before Nebraska heads back south into LA to take on USC for the weekend. It's that cool of a place.
So I haven't seen the full schedule yet, but yesterday when I saw this come out, I tried to look closer at USC and UCLA and Oregon and Washington. There's at least one, because like Washington, I believe, is coming out to Nebraska in March, right?
Yeah.
And that's not that crazy from a weather perspective, but like, you're going to get these weird series. Is like UCLA is playing at Iowa in March, and it's going to happen. The real feel is 28, and we're just trying to grind this thing out somehow, where we could just be in Los Angeles and it's 78 degrees and having a great time. But that's Big Ten baseball now. It's a gigantic conference with too many teams, but we welcome our West Coast brethren, and Nebraska certainly does with this awesome week of scheduling.
I do think what they'll try to do, and I'll have to look more in depth at the full schedule, is have USC and UCLA play home games for most of the early part of the season. Even if it's an advantage to go to Michigan State in March for the Spartans and play a team that's used to the warm weather, is that really good for baseball? Like UCLA and USC should be loaded up with home games in March and early April, and then they can go on the road to these Big Ten, traditional Big Ten venues in May. So anyway, that was interesting. Good to get that bit of information. I'm going to be trying to find a way to schedule a trip to Southern California in March. Not sure how that's going to work out. Maybe spring break for my kids, although it doesn't usually match up with the college spring break. Not going to work. I don't know how this is going to happen, but I'd like to be there for the games at Pepperdine, if nothing else. When we come back, some comments from Nebraska coaches and players on Tuesday about this upcoming Illinois game and how it's shaping up to be a fist fight. We will get into that after the break. Okay, Locked On Nebraska fans, I want to tell you about Roy. If you've not heard about it, it stands for Return on You, and it is a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in name, image, and likeness like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, keep your favorite athletes out of the portal. As you know, NIL has changed the game for athletes. Roy allows you to change the game for yourself, for fans. It changes the game for fans. When fans contribute to a successful Roy campaign, they receive access to exclusive content from the athlete. They get behind the scenes footage and other personal reflections, all of which are available only to the fans who supported that athlete. Download Roy for iOS or Android. Enter the referral code Locked On, and you'll be automatically entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 in cash. Use the referral code Locked On for an opportunity to win $5,000. Just visit Roy.com for more details. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Visit Roy.com for additional details. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game today with Roy.
All right, we're back. Not sure if it's the Bud Crawford effect, but a lot of talk about fist fights in Lincoln yesterday. Marcus Satterfield, Nebraska's offensive coordinator, says, quote, "We've got to be ready for a fist fight," says Dylan Raiola, quote, "It's going to be physical. Everything has been preparing us for this moment. I know our guys will be ready to answer the bell." So Matt Rhule has done a good job of sort of resetting the deck, I think, this week, and saying to his team, "Hey, look, you guys haven't accomplished crap yet. Let's see you do it now with a team that is physical and that is built a little bit closer to you."
Yeah, so you mentioned, Connor, to me in talking about this week that you felt a little bit of a different pulse, like a little bit of a different vibe from Nebraska fans heading into this game. And I would agree. I think Nebraska fans like fed off of the energy the week of the Colorado game. There was some nervous anticipation just because we didn't know how Nebraska was going to respond to that moment, that big moment on the stage, game on national TV. But I think people generally felt like if Nebraska played up to its potential or close to that, like it was the better team, it was going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, now we're in the Big Ten, and Illinois has put it on paper this year. Nebraska's like a 9 or even 10-point favorite. We'll get into that on Friday. We'll see what FanDuel's got them at when we pick this game. But nonetheless, they're a 2-score favorite in this game. I don't know that I get that sense from this game. I'm not sure that Nebraska fans are feeling that kind of confidence about the Huskers on Friday night.
It's weird. I'm not sure. I haven't been able to put my finger on the pulse this week very much. I just feel like people, and I'm talking about fans, not players, have been a little bit less likely to walk around with their chest puffed out this week, instead of that Colorado week. It's smack talking anybody that you could find. For the record, and we'll predict this like you said on Friday, but I do think Nebraska is better than Illinois. I think Nebraska's a lot better than Illinois is almost a word that I would throw on it as well. Like, so I think that 8 to 10 points is pretty warranted. And I think there's a chance that Nebraska wins by a couple touchdowns. So like, I'm not, I think they have like advantages kind of everywhere. Illinois is built closer to like how Nebraska is built, right? Their defense is pretty good. Like I'm just talking about their athletes across the board, but Nebraska has a lot of advantages if you just did the tail of the tape. And I just, there's some, I don't know if it's trepidation. I'm not sure what it is from the fan base this week going into this one. Okay, you've done it against these kind of lighter, spreadier, whatever type of teams. And then you struggled a little bit with Northern Iowa, even though you won 34-3, who kind of ran it right at you, and they wanted to be physical and they wanted to play Big Ten football, and they had a 10-minute drive. So maybe that's where some of the hesitation comes from this week. I'm not sure.
I think some of it also is just like the juice that Nebraska fans feel coming from inside the program. When it was Colorado week, the tone was set pretty early. It wasn't like Matt Rhule was talking smack, but you could feel the confidence coming from him. And I think he's confident this week, but it's in a different, like more respectful kind of way. Like Mekhi Bayer, the week of the Colorado game, let me at him. I mean, it was fire in his eyes. I'm coming down on kickoffs. It's going to take 2 players to block me. And then the opening kickoff of the game, that's exactly what happened. They tried to block him with 1 player, and he leveled that guy.
Mhm.
So early in that game, you could see that Nebraska was going to back up its talk, and the crowd was there to back up everything that Nebraska had to say. This is just different. Like, this is Big Ten. Like, you're not going to win this game because of anything that's said during the week. It's way more business-like. That's the feel you get from Nebraska players. They're respectful, and I think legitimately, like, genuinely respectful of Illinois when they talk about what Illinois is as a program. Illinois come into Lincoln the last 2 times these teams have played at Memorial Stadium and won the game. Now, Nebraska returned the favor in somewhat dominant fashion last year in
Yeah.
Champaign. It was 17-0 early in that game. I watched some highlights of that game this week just to jog my memory. And there was a play with Heinrich Harburg going up the middle and following Ethan Piper as a lead blocker and just bowling through the Illinois secondary. Like, Nebraska said, okay, you're a physical team, Brett Bielema, like, let us show you our physicality. And Harburg was a great guy to have at the controls for that. I wonder if we just got a preview on Saturday against Northern Iowa of the way Nebraska may want to use Heinrich Harburg. If you're going to send a message in the Big Ten about the kind of physical team you can be and the way you want to run the ball, yes, they have Dante Dowdell this year, who Nebraska didn't have last year. But how about a little Heinrich Harburg as a side dish for that?
So remember, this was the game last year where Nebraska was coming off of the Michigan game and the very famous Sunday practice, and then they played on Friday. And Rhule even mentioned earlier this week, hey, we were like emotionally we were ready to go for this game last year. And I don't know, maybe they're, just because Nebraska, when they played Colorado this year, they had an edge to them because they had lost to Colorado the year before. And so now you're supposed to win and you're ranked and you have all this stuff. Like, maybe that's why people are a little bit scared. But Nebraska's going to, they're going to do, I think, what they do in this game. So I think they'll probably be okay. And I don't think I'm not worried about them not being emotionally ready. I mean, I'm just not. It's Friday night. It's a 400th consecutive sellout. I think that'll be an awesome crowd. I think it'll be unique. It'll be a weird, different buzz in there. But I think it'll serve Nebraska well.
A sign, and I'm not saying you're going to see it this week, but a sign that Nebraska is back as a program, as a contending program, will be when it doesn't need any kind of emotional edge. It doesn't need the psychological trick to get itself ready. When you can just be a football team and go out there and go toe to toe and say, this is who we are. This is who we are every week. This is who we're going to be this week. It's not different. Like, we don't need the motivational, whatever it is, to win this game. And that may be the way that Nebraska is approaching this, that they're trying to approach this. But I think if there's an opportunity to have a psychological edge or something, you're gonna look for that. And that was Matt Rhule talking on Monday about how they're the hunted instead of the hunter. I think he's still going for that. But Ohio State doesn't do that. Ohio State's just like, okay, we're here and we're gonna win. So someday, the hope is to get Nebraska to that place.
All right, Mitch, that's it for us today. Still a couple more pods the rest of the week, and if it warrants, we might have a reaction on Saturday or Sunday. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast. They will get you covered over there, Spencer and the crew. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description to this very podcast, so you don't even need to search. Just scroll down. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.